Welcome, everyone. My name is Diogo Pinheiro. I'm the Assistant Director for CURCA. And with me here is Alison Grindal, the CURCA Program Coordinator. Together, we organize the bulk of CURCA's activities. And we're here today to talk to you about the annual research conference and how to write an abstract. Of course, we're going to talk about writing an abstract for the ARC, but you can use whatever we're going to talk about today to write abstract for other conferences as well, right? And so the way that we're going to go do this is that I'm going to present this, and then at the end we'll stop and turn over to your questions. This is being recorded, so if you would like a copy of the recording later, email us at curca@ung.edu. So first of all, I'm sure most of you, if not all of you, know about the annual research conference, right? So the annual research conference is UNG's undergraduate and graduate student conference, right? It is designed for students to get their kind of first tastes of presenting at a conference, right? We organize it as a real conference, right? It's going to be a process where you're going to go through peer review, you're going to get feedback from experts and professors, and then you're going to have the chance to kind of practice your presentation skills in front of a friendly audience, right? It will kind of get you accustomed to presenting at conferences. It will get you to understand how conferences operate, right? Like we run this as a full conference, right? This isn't just some side event, right? It is, we're going to have a program and name badges and schedules and moderators and all that stuff, right? So that this is a great first step into the world of presenting at conferences. And if you're experienced, it's a little another opportunity for you to get some more practice. And it's another line that you can put on your CV, right? And on top of it all, it's a chance to see what your classmates and your colleagues are doing so that maybe you can connect over ideas, share ideas about future collaborations, about for future projects, understand how the world of academia and et cetera works, and of course, get some free food and celebrate your work, right? So to participate at the annual research conference, you only need one thing, which is going to be a 250-word abstract, right? In other words, you don't even have to have a completed paper yet. Just the abstract will be sufficient, right? You're going to submit that abstract by February 13th at midnight, right, 11:59 p.m. And that abstract can be about past research, ongoing research, even proposed research, right? You have a great research idea that you would like some feedback on, you can present proposed research at the ARC, right? This year, the ARC will take place in the Gainesville campus. We alternate every year, 1 year at the Gainesville campus, 1 year at the Lilongwe campus. So this year it's going to be at the Gainesville campus on March 20th from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. at the Nesbitt building, right? And so it's going to be, it's easy to park there, it's convenient, it's an easy building to access. So it's an ideal situation for you to be involved in and to present in, right? So what are some of the things that students should be mindful of when they're thinking about presentations and when they're thinking about their abstracts, right? So sometimes there's going to be jargon that you might not be familiar with. Sometimes the target, the audience might not be reachable. You can be nervous because maybe you're presenting in front of all these strangers. Maybe you're going to have, a little bit of fear of public speaking, right? At the ARC, you can kind of work through all these issues in front of a friendly audience, right? It's going to be your professors, your classmates, people who are friendly to you, right? So before we get into the details of the abstract, let's talk a little bit about the types of presentations that you can do at the ARC, right? We're going to have both poster and oral presentations, right? You can choose which one you want, right? Posters are going to be a little bit more friendly to first timers because you don't have to have a 15-minute presentation ready to go. You can be just having the 2 or 3 minute elevator pitch, and you're going to be in front of your poster so you can point things out, right? Posters are also going to be very common in the sciences, right? You have to have just a 3 to 5 minute elevator pitch version of your research. There's going to be more informal conversations and informal questions, right? And so for some people, posters makes total sense. For others, if you want to present an oral presentation where you're going to talk between 10 to 15 minutes to an audience, right? Maybe with a PowerPoint presentation, maybe with some other visuals, right? And what's going to happen is that you're going to present for those 10 to 15 minutes uninterrupted, and then at the end you would have a Q&A, right? And so in some fields, that's going to be more common, right? In some of the liberal arts and the humanities, the social sciences, you're going to see more of an emphasis on oral presentations, but it also can be a great way to get familiarity with kind of presenting for a longer time, right? And so which one is better for you? Well, that's something that you should discuss with your mentor and decide for yourself, right? But we have both available, right? And again, when we say that posters are going to be common in the sciences and oral presentations that are common in the liberal arts, it doesn't mean that you have to abide by that, right? We'll have posters in the liberal arts and we'll have oral presentations in the sciences. Whatever works for you is fine, right? So what do we expect from an abstract? Well, the abstract is going to be a really short summary of your project, where you're not gonna go into too much of the details, right? You're going to go into the kind of big picture aspects of your project, right? What is your topic? Why is it important? What did you do in a sentence or two? And what did you find, right? It's not going to be the details. It's not going to be the kind of the nitty gritty of your project. It's going to be like the big picture of your project, where you talk about the research question or the project question, the importance of that, and what you've done or what you were planning to do, right? Remember to adapt it to your audience, right? In other words, the ARC is going to be a multidiscipline conference, so write with a general audience in mind. Again, the limit is 250 words, and we have this link here on our screen that you can take a look at abstracts that have been done. So let's talk a little bit about the step-by-step of writing an abstract, right? So the first thing that you should kind of introduce in your abstract is the big picture problem, the big picture topic, the big picture idea that is important in your field. Maybe because it's debated from a scientific perspective, maybe because it has a great deal of real world impact, maybe because it is something that is related to contemporary issues or gaps in our knowledge. So you present that big picture, right? Like, oh, there's this thing that we want to solve. There's this thing that we want to understand. In the existing literature, here's the gap, right? And my paper tries to, or my presentation tries to fill in this gap by doing X, Y, and Z, right? This is the method. You don't have to go into the details, right? Like, oh, I did a survey. I did an experiment, right? You don't go into too much of the details because, again, it's going to be a relatively a short abstract, right? And then you close it out by kind of pointing out how your position, your method, etc., is good, and you close it out with a strong concluding sentence, right? And so it's very common for students who are presenting or writing an abstract for the first time to get lost in the details. And it's not about the details, it's about the big picture, right? What's the big problem, the big topic, the big idea? How are we lacking in knowledge? What are in that big idea? Here's how I'm trying to do it. And again, it doesn't have to be like, oh, I'm going to do a survey with 15 people at 12 o'clock on a Wednesday in the morning. Blah, it can just be like, we conduct a survey, kind of big picture stuff, right? And so once you submit your abstract to us, we are going to send your abstract to reviewers, and these reviewers are going to be faculty members and staff members here at UNG. They have done this many, many times before. They have great experience in conferences, both presenting and reviewing for conferences, right? And then based on your abstract that you submitted, you're going to get feedback from these reviewers, right? We accept the vast majority of submissions, right? It's relatively rare that we reject anyone, but this gives you a way to get feedback from people that you might not necessarily know, so that in the future you can improve your abstract writing ideas, right? The idea here is not to kind of punish you, it's to give you feedback so that there's that continuous improvement, right? So in this abstract, there's going to be 4 different criteria that we're going to ask our reviewers to evaluate you by. First is going to be the overall writing quality, right? Is it proper form, proper grammar, proper spelling? Does it kind of look like a proper text, right? So that's going to be the first. The second is the thesis statement, the hypothesis or statement of purpose is clear, right? In other words, what are you doing here? What's the goal here of this presentation, right? That's going to be another big aspect of the rubric. Next is going to be the evidence of supporting research or thought related to the thesis, hypothesis, purposes. In other words, this can be proposed research, right? But we want to see that you gave it some thought. How are you planning to tackle this issue, right? Do you have a plan in place? And again, it's not about the details of the plan. It's about saying, I'm going to do this method. I'm going to do this idea. I'm going to undergo this type of thing to understand this problem, right? And then last but not least is, did the abstract correctly convey the significance or the relevance of that topic to the field, right? And so the idea is, you've made a clear, compelling argument because your abstract is well written. There's a thesis statement or statement of purpose or something that you're trying to achieve. You have a plan to achieve it, and you've made it very clear why that's an important topic, right? And so that's going to be the main way that we're going to evaluate your abstract, right? Now, we use these criteria for the ARC, but if you're applying for other conferences, odds are that they'll go by a similar set of criteria. Now, once you have your abstract ready, you would visit our website, the arc.ungjournals.org. And there, if you don't have an account yet, you create an account. And then if you have an account, you would log in, and then you would click on that button that says Start Submission, right? And that Start Submission, keep in mind that there's going to be a few things that you're going to have to fill out, right? Questions that we'll have about your presentation and so on and so forth, so that you complete the application there on top of submitting your abstract, right? So read closely, read the instructions closely to make sure that everything is in there, right? So we're going to ask you about the details, right? What's the abstract? Are there keywords? For competing interests, you can, if you have conflict of interest, you can add something, but most people can just put NA, right? Not applicable. And then you would upload your PDF or Microsoft Word file of your abstract, right? Sometimes people will use different software. Keep in mind that we prefer PDF or Microsoft Word, right? Don't include your name on the abstract itself, right? We want the process of revision to be anonymous. So don't add your name or the name of your co-authors in the file with the abstract itself. And then on the website, that's where you would add all your contributors, mentors, co-authors, etc., right? Given name is the first name, family name is the last name. Section 4, make sure that you add the discipline, English, etc., etc. There might be a section there where we're going to ask you about your availability in terms of presentations. Make sure that you if you can't do in the morning, if you can't do afternoon, if you can, make sure that you add it there so that we can take into account as we are preparing the program. And then check review the details, etc., and then agree to the digital certifications, and then hit submit, right? Now, if you are a part of a broader panel, right? Maybe you and a few of your classmates were in a particular class, and you want to have a panel that it's going to be all the papers from that particular class. It's completely fine for you to suggest a panel proposal. Just make sure that in the comments to the editor section, you say, oh, I am part of this panel. with these other people, and then we'll try to make sure that you're in the same panel during in the program, right? Um, Now, besides submitting an abstract for the conference, the other thing that you can do is if you have a completed project, if you have a completed paper, you can submit for consideration for best essay or best poster, right? So what would happen is that after you submit your abstract, and we've kind of made the initial processing, you would log on to your account again, and then you would attach your completed paper or completed poster as a discussion, right? You would make the title of that discussion Best Presentation Award for ARC, and then you include some text in the message, but upload your paper or your poster as an attachment to that discussion, and then we'll take that into consideration for best essay or best poster award, right? If you have any questions about that process, make sure that you email us at curca@ung.edu. And then, of course, in general, if you have questions, you can reach out to us at curca@ung.edu, or you can reach out to me personally, or you can reach out to Allison, who is our program coordinator here for CURCA, right? And so we hope to see you all at the ARC. It's going to be once again on March 20th, and the deadline for abstract submissions is February 13th. So we're going to stop recording now and turn over to any questions that you might have.